Murray, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. And I got to say, really, even, because we talked, it was either earlier in the year or it was just towards the end of last year. We were talking about new music and we had such an incredible conversation. I want to thank you for that. And even before we start, thank you for this conversation because with so much going on, if there's anybody who I want to talk to you about, if you want to call it the state of the world, you are the person to talk to, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Rudy. I appreciate that very much. I really do. It's I think our conversation probably coincided with, like I didn't really know if I was going to do an album or not, but I knew I wanted to have these songs, these particular songs just out there. However many people heard them, they were like very strong for me. And so I wanted to put out "I Live on a White Cloud" and the 1%. So, those they just came out as the fabulous black and white videos, and I'm really glad. I'm glad I did that. They did stimulate a lot of conversation.
What I'm enjoying and learning from you is from your perspective of everything that you've seen from the shootings and all the things that we've seen in this last year and a half because most of the people I get a chance to talk to of course are people who are black, so
Mm-hmm.
getting a chance to see your journey through your eyes is really incredible for me because you are somebody who doesn't hold back, tells the truth, tells exactly how you feel, and you're not worried about any kind of backlash or whatever else. I mean, even just on social media, as we were approaching Canada Day, I mean, you lowered your flag to half staff.
That's true. Yeah, we put candles out on the docks and a lantern actually on the floater. So, yeah, yeah, I'm totally. We got to make it right, and I believe that with all my heart.
How important was it for you to get this music out? I'm sort of jumping around all over the place, but I'm going to go back to the beginning and how this all started for you and your journey. But how important was it for you to get this music out? Because we are talking about a new album as we speak is going to be coming out soon.
It was very, very important personally to me. I mean, I'm not unique as a person. I mean, I think everyone in the world, I mean, because it galvanized the world when that footage that brave young girl took of the murder of George Floyd uh, became worldwide. I was aghast. I mean, but it wasn't that I was unfamiliar with these issues, not just in the United States, but my own country, and towards all kinds, all racialized people undergo this. I mean, my best friend, the best man at my wedding, was born in Pakistan, so he's experienced his own level of racism against South Asian people. My son is now dating an Asian girl, and they encounter that too. So my take on it, and I wanted to get "I Live on a White Cloud" out like way ahead of any kind of sense of an album project,
Mm-hmm.
was it's one thing for people like me to get up on our holy high horse and go, "This is terrible. It's all terrible. My goodness, this should never happen." But what I think it's time to do is like turn the eyeballs around and have a really good look inside our own heads
Can
and
I can
see
I
whether or not we're part of it.
can I interrupt?
Sure.
Because and I want to say this, guys. I want to make this clear for people who are watching this interview on Rudy Blair Entertainment Media, RudyBlairMedia.com. I've seen a lot of people what you just said do the oh, we got to do something about it, and then they move on to whatever else that I almost want to call it like a fad. And I hate using that word, but that's
Mhm.
what I feel like when I see some of these people doing this. You, on the other hand, I can tell from when we first spoke that you were very not just serious, but I mean, it affected you and how you continue to um, learn from this. And I want to make it clear that that's one of the biggest reasons why I have so much respect for you. And I do, want to talk to you about this is because I can see that you are somebody who truly was affected by this. You're not black, but you are affected by this, and that you want to see change, and you're doing it in whatever manner that you can. And that's one of the biggest reasons why, again, I wanted to talk to you about this, talk about your music. But again, so much respect for you.
Thank you, Rudy. I mean, I'm a history nut, and as as such, I mean, the themes that I've written about in on this record, there's an underlying, I mean, I guess you'd call it a sense of optimism that things can, and that in the long arc of history, they ultimately do change. Um, I like sort of pointing out, because I finished reading a book recently, rereading it actually, which is called The Flight. And it's about the 1927 flight of Charles Lindbergh across the Atlantic Ocean as a solo flyer. And he became like bigger than any rock star there ever was. His ticker tape parade was bigger than Neil Armstrong's when he returned to the United States. In the book, it's not just about the flight, it's about the phenomenology of why he became so incredibly famous and why he was such a national and global hero at the time. And so the book looks at the context of what was happening just in the aftermath of the First World War. Millions of able-bodied young men had been killed. The economies of Europe had crashed. There was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment in the United States, particularly against Germans. The economic crisis, even though there was the roaring stock boom of the 20s, left a lot of people behind and set the stage for the 30s when the market crashed. There was the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. There was the entrenchment and strengthening of Jim Crow laws. There was all of, I mean, Americans lynched a guy, a German immigrant, and basically, I'm sorry to put this out, but cut his business off, and they mutilated him before they lynched him. And he was a German immigrant who had the temerity to get drunk in a bar and say F the United States. That's why they lynched him. So does any of this sound familiar?
Yeah.
So the pendulum goes back and forth and back and forth, and slowly, like, Obama pointed this out, that the arc of history sort of swings back and forth. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but progressively things get a little bit better than they were. And even though, I as a white man have to look way inside myself and see, okay, what can I change in me that's going to make things different? And, how am I culpable for what's going on? But, also with the full understanding that things, even though there's racism, it's no longer institutionalized. Now, I know that certain groups are trying to change that by gerrymandering, rigging voting, and that kind of thing. We see that, that's something that people do. I mean, we always point the finger at the United States, but I guess that's because it's perhaps more evident there than elsewhere. But white people in the United States, a certain class of white people in the United States, are afraid. They're just afraid because the demographic is changing, and they're afraid they're going to lose they're afraid of racialized people, because, like it or not, there's going to be more racialized people in the United States in the very near future. There already are, than there are that type of like staunch right-wing, religious, Republican type Americans. So they're terrified, and they're trying to figure out that the only way, they have figured out the only way they can win an election is by cheating. That's a terrible thing. Well, sorry, I'm raving. I didn't mean to rave.
No, because it's funny when you were talking about that. I remember seeing a news story from, I think it was the BBC, visiting South Africa,
Yeah.
and how things have really changed there. Even though, yes, there is still a small population of, still, if you want to call it, rich white families, majority of it is it's the black that is running South Africa. And not just that, that now when you look at the poverty, there is probably more white poverty than there is black. And it's incredible to see that switch. And it made me wonder, is, folks, what you just said in the United States, or even maybe even in Canada, are they worried about seeing something like that happening?
Well, I think the whole thing ties together. I think the fear that people have of globalism, and the fear that they have of their future not being what it could have been in the past, or what their parents' future might have been, or what their children's future might be, is diminished. about, rampant, out of control multinational corporations that basically go where they can exploit the labor market and leave places where they can't. There's all of these things are tied together in my mind. And, I guess overarching in my humble view is that there are solutions available, and that as nations, as people, as individuals, as people who have economic power, political power, and maybe the power of our opinions if we're artists or writers, that if we don't really make those changes that are required, and I mean on a macro level, they'll be made for us in ways that we really don't like. If you disenfranchise large sections of the population, what you're sowing is the seeds of a revolution. If you continue to engage in a consumerist society that's entirely dependent on growth and consumption, well, I think, the end game is pretty evident at this point. So, we still got to start looking inside our heads and going, not only, who are we and what do we believe? And is it right or is it wrong? But what do we actually need? What is it that we need? Like, has the acquisition of enormous wealth made a person, I know it's a cliche, but has it made a person any happier? Like, what you need is what you need, but what you need the most is human relationships, is family, human relationships, and love. We're very interdependent on each other. And if we don't have that, I mean, one of my favorite books is called Man's Search for Meaning. It was written by a former Freudian psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl. He wrote it in the aftermath of being in the Nazi death camps because he wondered why some people survived who seemingly shouldn't, and some strong, robust people that should have didn't. Anyway, he came up with the overarching idea that the most important thing for human beings in life is that they perceive that their life has meaning. That's it. Nothing more than that. Which is why people will lay down their lives for others in extremis if they feel that in that act they are of service to others. So I don't think things are all that complicated.
But we make it complicated, though. We
Sure.
do it in so many ways. Something else I was thinking about too, because we are going to talk more about this album. And you wrote this music basically before the announcement what happened with the discovery of the indigenous children's grave sites.
Yeah, I did.
Um, I'm curious, do you think that your album would have been different if you wrote this a little bit later with this story coming out? Or do you think some of the music even relates to this discovery?
I think that even though I Live on a White Cloud was really written out of a sense of revulsion to what happened to George Floyd, I think my sense of revulsion when I think of, helpless children being ripped away from their families and put it into a situation where they were horribly abused and ultimately died. I have an equal revulsion for that. So I think, we've always, forgetting the issue of race, we as Canadians have always had a kind of a smug self-satisfaction that we're on the moral high ground. Well, sorry, we're not. And we have to, as much as America has to make amends for its original sin, well, we've got one too. We probably have more than one if you count, the Chinese railway workers and the incarceration of Japanese people. But we're slowly but surely coming to terms. We're having the conversation, and I think that's good and healthy. But if anybody in any position in government decides not to spend whatever it takes in the way of, treasure or labor to make sure that all of those children, wherever they're found, are identified and either buried properly with a memorial or their remains are sent home to their family, I'll be out there with my fist raised with everybody else. I really feel very strongly about that.
I absolutely agree with you too. One other question I want to ask you too, because of course, we talked about Canada Day, you lowering the flags. And in fact, I found that the interviews that I was doing, I actually even couldn't even say Canada Day. I had to say July 1st because
Mhm.
Canada Day, saying that word right now almost seemed like a bad thing to say. And even though, people weren't doing fireworks, mind you, I heard one or two people popping them out and everything. I found it so interesting the contrast. Whereas when Canadians were trying as much as possible to really, not to celebrate, but to at least witness or to look at and observe the day, July 1st, the United States, July 4th, they were popping everything out and celebrating.
Mhm.
And then you think about what we were just talking about, the things that have happened down there. I found it such a strange contrast. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the similarities between citizens of the United States and Canadians are often pointed out. But I think that culturally we're very different. Um, there's a long history in the United States, just dealing with what you mentioned, that patriotism is it transcends politics. It transcends the events of the day. Americans of all stripes, whether they're left leaning, whether they have the same set of beliefs as you do, or whether they're Trump supporters, all feel this intense patriotism and love of country and sense that we've sacrificed a great deal for wherever it is we finally are going. And that they feel that sense of patriotism above and beyond anything because it's something that unites them in spite of present circumstances, above and beyond the vagaries of politics. I mean, it's hard to describe, but I mean, I sense that it's there. Canada has really never had a history of kind of jingoistic, overarching, flag waving, cannons roaring patriotism because we just didn't really develop that way. But that being said, even though I lowered my flag to half mast, and even though I put the lights out to honor those Indigenous children, I'm still very proud of the experiment that is Canada. I celebrate Canada. I understand that its origins are tarnished. I understand that there are events that happened. I mean, I said it in the song, don't pin the blame on me for what my great grandfathers did. They didn't know, they couldn't see. Well, that's not the way to look at things. They did what they did. But in some cases, they did what they did because that was the tenor of the times. That was, the idea of making Aboriginal native children into good little white people who would fit into society was the overarching view. They were viewed as being savages. I mean, the roots of racism are being able to dehumanize any group to the point where you think they're inferior to what you are. So there it is. There it is in our past. But that doesn't mean that this really dynamic and generous experiment in democracy from all of the people that have come here, including native people who may have come here 50,000 years ago, but they still came here. We're all in this now. We have to be in it now, and we have to be in it together, and we have to put this kind of thing in a perspective that we understand it, that we embrace it, that we appreciate our past, good or bad, that we tell those stories, and then we find a way to live together in a way that's fair and harmonious with everybody. I mean, that's a pipe dream. Canada, I mean, I always tell people like the United States, there is no United States. It's like full of vastly different ideological, religious, racial, it's all just a big stirring honking mess. We're the same way. I mean, Canada is like a bumblebee. It should never fly, but somehow it does. And I think it's the goodwill of good people that keep it flying, even in spite of things that have happened like this. So I put my flag down for a good reason, but that doesn't mean that I don't think there's a really proud future for my country. I'm an immigrant too. You
Same here, my friend. Same here.
Yeah.
So let's look at the album. I always like to say, let's make this official. What exactly is the album called? And as we've
It's
talked
called
about it
Our. Oh,
through,
sorry. Okay.
no, I was going to say, what is the album called? And of course, the theme behind this album, please.
Well, the album is called Hourglass. Um, Hourglass is actually the title song on the album, and what it deals with is that reckoning that song, I should say, is deals with the reckoning that we have to come to as human beings, about what it is that we actually need, about the nature of this expansionist, consumer-driven economic model that's essentially wrecking the world. We have, and again, if we don't come to terms with that and make some sensible decisions about what all of that means and where it's going, then they'll be made for us. So Hourglass, the song, is a warning. It's a bellwether. The sand is moving faster than I've ever seen it move towards this day of reckoning, when you got like this way or that way. It's as clear as day. So the other songs on it, we've mentioned I live on a white cloud. That's my view that, people such as myself have to really look inside. Any time that you find yourself going, something like, wow, he's incredibly well spoken for a Black person. Hello, there it is.
Exactly.
Or,
Exactly.
or the little jokes that you find yourself sort of chuckling to half embarrassedly about racialized people, or, whatever's in there. You gotta find it, and you gotta go, okay, that's just wrong. And you gotta also call it when you see it in other people. So that's my George Floyd message, because that kind of thing could never happen in a just society. That just could not happen. The song for Alan Kurdi, I mean, that's another event. That photograph of that little boy drowned on the beach just broke my heart. I mean, it made me weep, because, I have a son. He was little like that once. I know what it would have felt like if he was taken from me. But the thing about the song ultimately is, even though it's about the plight of all refugees, is that little boy's life actually meant something, because it galvanized people to the point that a lot of Syrian refugees were admitted to Canada. And, flag at half mast for this, flag at full mast for that. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we've gotten it wrong.
Yeah.
So I took a look at the pandemic. I did write that one during the pandemic. And I just really wrote that because I wanted to feel better. And I wanted other people to sort of realize that, the human race has been through a lot of these things, the Black Death and cholera epidemics, diphtheria epidemics, nowadays like Zika, tuberculosis, whatever, Spanish flu, killed millions and millions of people. This is not a strange thing for the human race. Every so often, Mother Nature comes up and goes, whack, just to remind us that we exist on the earth like a tick on the back of a hound.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wrote the song to be reassuring. It's been a long time since people have been tested like it here in a way, and they've gotten soft a little bit. And the people, a lot of people have suffered a great deal. They've lost people. I understand that, of course. I'm not belittling that. But it sometimes feels to me like the people that bleat the loudest are the people who have the biggest sense of entitlement. Oh, I can't go to the ballet. Well, you will. It'll happen again. Just suck it up and be patient. So my favorite line in that song is, don't drink the whole 6-pack, put it back in the fridge, So, but there is thematically, all of the songs on the record have this. The one exception to them being about social issues, about which I care a great deal about, is A Thompson Day, which is for me, that's a very spiritual song, because I find, as corny and cliche as it sounds, I find my spirit really renewed by being out in nature, out in the world. I'm a very outdoor person. I'm really happy when I'm there. When I watch a bald eagle fly by, or when I watch an osprey fly by, I play that old game where you try and project yourself into the creature, like in your mind,
Yeah.
and you pretend you're seeing the world from its perspective. Or when I see I don't know, I seem to have pet dragonflies. They just come down, hover right in front of my nose. Hummingbirds do that, and you can't help but look at a thing like that and just be that's so alive. It's so who it is. It's so part of this whole dance of subatomic particles that we all are. And so my take on all of that was to remember Tom Thompson's iconic painting, The West Wind, and realize I've been in that painting. You know, I understand that painting. It's full of the vibrancy and energy of what I love about nature. The rolling white caps being blasted by the wind, watching the trees sway, the noise wind makes when it goes through the trees. And it's also really about the fact that those moments when you apprehend that particular dance are the moments where you realize that life is really the sweetest thing because it's short. So, you know, when I wrote that line, it got me kind of emotional. But I wrote this line in that song called, I may not be here forever, but I'm here today. That's okay. It's nature's way. Everything dies. I'm going to die. I'm not, maybe not you. You're gonna live forever.
Oh my goodness. I love all the words you said, man. I agree with everything that you just said, and which is why to me this album is so special. For you though, where do you compare this album to what you've done in the past and what was going on in the past too? Where would you compare this one?
I have a long history of writing songs that are about, you know, the tumult of relationships, or about, you know, even sort of semi disguised. I mean, I've written things about other alternate universes. Uh, One of my favorite memories is I had a song on the Into a Mystery record that Carol Pope and everybody sang on, and it was called "Try Walking Away." It was a radio hit, actually, to the point where, like, when the Blue Jays walked a batter, they'd play it when the batter was going down the baseline. You know, try walking away. What it was actually about was a woman who was in an abusive relationship finding it in herself to go like, enough, and leave, because that wasn't a popular thing. I mean, you know, Nashville was full of Stand By Your Man. So there was an American singer, quite successful lady, who recorded that song. I won't say who it is, just, but she was successful. And she loved it, and her manager loved it, and everybody loved it. And the A&R guy for her record company said, "Nope, you can't put that on the record." And everybody went, predictably, "Golly gee, why not?" And his exact words were, "Because it's about something." So there's the music business in a nutshell.
Jeez. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh, drives me nuts. But you know what? It's people like you who I consider the purists that keep the flow going and where music needs to be. And I thank you so much for not just the interviews, man, but the great songs that you have done from decade to decade and continue to put a stamp, or of things that are happening in this world through music, because a lot of times history may not be told, but music continues to tell the stories, and you can't stop the songs, and that's what you do, my friend, very well.
Well, you're right, Rudy. I mean, music has been one of the keynotes in my life. And I do want to stress to people who are completely saturated with pop culture and that music that entails, that there's a whole other world out there of like really great music that you could tap into. Just attend your folk festival, hear World Beat, you know, like there's all kinds of really cool, deep, good stuff out there to listen to. You know, tap into your NPR station that comes out of the United States, or Luxembourg radio, or like there's all these sources. So just, you know, go exploring, have some fun.
Before we go, any chance, because things are opening up, are you going to be doing any shows, concerts?
Yes. I am praying that that will come to fruition, but the touring company that books myself and the band I play with, called Lunch at Allen's,
I was going to ask you
is
about that if you
booking.
guys are doing something.
Yeah, we've got 12 concert dates now booked in November
Nice.
in British Columbia. Um, we'll see. You know, I mean, if the theaters don't open past 25% capacity, that's probably not going to happen. I'm hoping that it will, that they do. I had to cancel between myself and Lunch Downs. We had to cancel like 26 concerts when this thing hit in 2020. So that hurt because I really like going out and playing music for people. There's no substitute. I don't really, I understand why people do it, but you know, doing it online or it's not the same. It's just not the same. You know, if people can't throw stuff at you when they're displeased with what you're doing, then it's not a real experience.
Oh my goodness. I hear you, man. Look, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys perform because it's been a couple of years since I've actually seen you guys do. I've seen shows that you guys have done in Toronto, which has always been cool. So I cannot wait to see you guys come back to Toronto and do it all over again.
Well, the kids remain ready. They're all excited and they got the bit between their teeth. We'll see how it works out. I'm really hoping it will because I miss it. I miss playing live music really a lot.
Same here, man. Murray, thank you so much again for the interview. Say hello to your lovely wife for me, please.
I will. She's actually having a salad in the porch as we speak. I will
Oh,
most certainly do that.
fantastic. Take care, my friend. I hope to see you soon. And again, thank you so much for the great music.
Well, thank you, Rudy. I appreciate it. And, turn around and finish that mix, okay?
I definitely will.
Okay.